Story 1. I call my stepdaughter's entitled boyfriend Wreck-It Ralph, no relation to the trademark cartoon, just coincidental naming. He has a tendency to break/ruin/tear up everything he touches. My stepdaughter, who is actually a sweet and endearing young woman whom I love dearly, has, like many young women with self-esteem issues, allowed herself to be led astray by work. In the year they've been together, she's lost everything, but at 23 she is old enough to learn her lessons without us parents coming to her rescue until she gets rid of work and back on track. When they first got together, they lived with her dad and myself for a few months. It very quickly became apparent Wur had a chip on his shoulder when it came to me. He would carry tales to my husband, causing us to argue. Despite my husband telling Wur many times that was my house and everything in it was mine, Wur would keep asking my husband, not me, if he could have this or that, and that's if he asked. He kept getting more and more animals despite our telling him no more. Neither were taking care of the ones they had. They weren't buying dog or cat food or cat litter, my husband and I were. They weren't picking up the messes, and they weren't training them, allowing them to tear up our belongings. Mary Jane is legal in our state, and there is a dispensary in our town, and the only work these two would do is door delivery, her job, with a daily payout just to get enough money for Wur to make a purchase at the dispensary every day, along with eating at fast food restaurant. Wur's chip on his shoulder when it came to me was such that they brought my husband a soda one night, walking in the back door right past me, calling out loudly, "We got you your favorite soft drink," to my husband in the living room with zero inclusion to me. Another example is my stepdaughter asking if she could use my debit card to go get the four of us drinks at a local convenience store one hot day. My husband and I were unloading stuff from the truck and trailer in the backyard, which was no problem. However, when checking my account, they spent $20 on food for Wur without asking. The end came when I told them they had to replace the bedroom door their dog chewed the bottom out of, and refused to allow the pit bull mix they wanted to rescue, even though it had a bite history, to enter my home. They moved to my stepdaughter's mother's home at that point. During their time there, my stepdaughter kept getting tickets in her car, which is only registered to my husband. They weren't paying their insurance, which I had bought my stepdaughter her own policy and paid the startup out of my money when they lived with us, and didn't pay the plate renewal. Now her license is suspended, and it cost my husband and I $600 to get the plates again in his name, only unsuspended. Plus, they had damaged the car and it needed repairs, so he took it from them. Before, her license was suspended, but after the police took the plates from her car, my husband let her use his truck, which was on my insurance policy. Wur drove it, and he has no license, and blew the motor in it. It is now sitting and can't be used. I told my husband I would put the car on my insurance for him, but only if he drove it. If he returned it to them, I was canceling the insurance, which I've stood by. Nevertheless, Wur called daily demanding my husband return the car to them. Once it was legal and fixed after 3 weeks, my husband finally said, "Look, you dumbass, I don't know what it is that you think you're trying to accomplish here, but you're not demanding anything from me, and you're not getting the car back. I may have originally bought it for her before she got with you, but it is my car in my name, and I'm keeping it in lieu of the truck you ruined. Don't call me again about the car. Got it?" We had been hearing of ongoing disputes between my husband's ex and Wur. Things got so bad there that Wur told my husband's ex-wife to pack her shit and get the F out of her own home. Another time he told her to shut the F up and remember who she's talking to. So we all decided it was time to let our daughter hit rock bottom, since she wasn't seeing how Wur had taken her from being a sweet, lovable, well-liked, and responsible girl in a college nursing program to this person with a criminal history and no prospects at the moment. My husband's ex-wife moved in with her boyfriend, turning the power off at the home she had been renting, and told her former landlord, whom she was actually long-time friends with, she wouldn't allow it to affect their friendship if he evicted them for squatting, since neither were on her lease to begin with. When my stepdaughter called wanting to come back, my husband told her she could, but Wur could not. Now they are staying at a homeless shelter in the town where Wur's mom lives, and Wur's mom won't let them live with her either. We hate to see her go through this, but this entitled Wur she won't let go of has really brought her down, and she can do so much better. This guy actually told us once he couldn't work at a factory that he interviewed at because it was climate controlled and his heart condition won't allow that. Then argued with me and my husband that climate controlled meant controlled by the climate, so it was hot in summer and cold in winter. We haven't seen him hold a job or do anything useful and productive since they've been together. Just demand from and use the people who love the girl he's become a Klingon to. Story 2. Greetings, I identify as non-binary and am also autistic, dealing with misophonia, which makes me highly sensitive to sensory stimuli. This often leads to sensory overload, particularly when I'm on the bus, a mode of transportation I frequently use to reach my college. To manage this, I consistently wear headphones and carry a sensory tool. On this particular occasion, I had a blue Tangle with me. To help communicate my needs, I always wear a sunflower lanyard. Attached to it is a notice requesting others to be understanding if I'm wearing headphones, as it indicates I might be overwhelmed and may not respond to verbal communication unless I actively acknowledge it. Note: if you're unfamiliar with what a blue Tangle fidget is, a quick search will provide you with a visual reference. During this incident, I had chosen a seat 2 rows behind the priority seats, as I didn't feel the need to occupy them that day. I was engrossed in my own world when E.M. entitled mother and her approximately 10-year-old son boarded the bus at the next stop. While the boy was engrossed in his own activities, E.M. had evidently noticed me boarding the relatively empty bus earlier. She seemed fixated on me, and her frequent scowls were hard to miss. Although I hadn't heard her previous attempts to get my attention, I did observe her becoming visibly frustrated, even resorting to forcefully pounding her hand on her seat. At the time, I didn't think much of it. Soon enough, E.M. leaned over and began clicking her fingers right in front of my face. The sudden intrusion caught me off guard, and I found myself retreating into my seat, feeling utterly overwhelmed. Desperate to cope, I tilted one ear of my headphones to hear her, which initiated the following conversation. S. Is everything all right? Please refrain from doing that. E.M. Huffing, why do you have that? She prodded my stomach, where the Tangle now rested, with more force than I expected. S. Visibly upset, please, just leave me alone. I repositioned my headphones, hoping to cut off the interaction, but E.M. reached over and yanked one of the ear cups, forcing it away from my ear. E.M. My son needs it, not you. S. Excuse me. C. Mom, what are you doing? E.M. Shut the F up, directed at C. You heard me. What, are you deaf? You don't need that? It's probably not even yours, you derogatory term. It's blue, and you're a girl. S. Taken aback, suppressing laughter at the absurdity. What are you talking about? And no, I'm not deaf. How can you be so ignorant? Yes, this is mine. Thank you. I bought it with my own money. And by the way, I'm not a girl, but that's beside the point. E.M. Oh my God, you're a freak. There's a derogatory term on this bus. Oh my God, she's going to infect us. C. I'm so sorry about her. S. Nah, it's all good. But seriously, what is wrong with you? Can you please stop bothering me and never touch me again? As I put my headphones back on. E.M. Give it to me. You don't even need it. S. What? C. Mom, just stop already. E.M. That toy. I know you're a derogatory term, but you're not a kid. S. Actually, it's not a toy. It's a sensory tool. I'm autistic, and it helps me regulate my emotions because I'm feeling very overwhelmed right now, thanks to you. I'd much rather avoid a meltdown. E.M. I don't care. Give it to me for my son. Bus driver BD. Can you keep the noise down, please? There's a baby on the bus. At this point, I ignore E.M. and shift comically so I'm facing the window. E.M. You witch! She grabs the tool out of my hand. I yelp in pain as her fake nails scratch me. Look what I got for you, baby, directed at C. Random person RP. What the actual F is wrong with you, lady? BD. pulling over. What the heck is going on? EM. This little witch is threatening me and my son and stole his toy. I'm shaking, holding my headphones to my ears, overwhelmed by the shouting and physical contact. RP. Oh, shut up. Everyone heard what you were saying to this poor kid. I literally just watched you, you knob. BD. Listen, if you don't calm down, I'm kicking you all off the bus. He looks at me. Hey, are you all right? S. I nod my head and raise a finger, indicating I need a moment. RP. Just give her the tool. I think she called it back. BD. Listen, I'm going to have to kick both of you off if this isn't sorted out in a moment. One of you will have to go. So, who stole it? Random person 2RP2, speaking with a distinct accent. Oh my God, can you just give her the effing thing back? I've got an appointment to get to, you bloody slag. Yes, they had a Scouse accent. C. Mom, just give it up already. EM. But they don't need it. Turning to me, selfish brat. She throws the tool on the seat next to me. BD. Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to get off the bus. EM. What? No, my stop is next. BD shrugs. Note. I asked if they could stay until the next stop because I felt bad for the kid. I moved. They got off at the next stop. The bus driver and strangers made sure I was okay. A very memorable experience with an entitled person. Story 3. For context, I'm a 17-year-old girl born in 27, but most of my class is made up of students born in 2008. I'm autistic and have extreme sensory issues, and I have informed the school about my disabilities. I also had a really traumatic childhood, resulting in something called traumatic amnesia, which means I don't remember much of my early years. This becomes important later in the story. I had heard some horror stories about our Finnish language teacher, but I like to think people who complain about teachers are usually exaggerating. Turns out, I was completely wrong. I arrived at my class 20 minutes early because I like to pick a good place to sit and just relax before the lesson starts. Since this was a new teacher, I wanted to make a good first impression. A little later, my friends showed up and sat at the same table as me. One of my friends, whom I'll call Friend 1, brought a piece of bread to class because he's a growing teen and the school lunch that day wasn't great. Most teachers are fine with this during regular classes, but not this one. The teacher got upset, red flag number 1, and I couldn't help but give her a confused look. After taking attendance and getting to know the students, the teacher gave us an assignment to write a timeline of our lives from childhood to the present. My friends noticed I went a little pale at the mention of this, as I knew recalling childhood memories was going to be hard for me. Still, I tried to complete the task. I started by writing my birth date, Roman 2020. 2007. The teacher then said, "You got your birthday wrong." I responded, "I'm sorry, but I think I know my birthday better than someone I met less than 30 minutes ago." She walked away, and I continued working. Meanwhile, Friend 1 had made their paper look super cool, with little drawings and doodles. I couldn't help but exclaim, a bit too loudly, "Wow, yours looks so much cooler than mine." The teacher walked over and said, "Can you take your headphones off while in the classroom? You're speaking too loudly." I started to feel anxious because I've been bullied for my sometimes annoyingly loud voice. I hate writing stuttering, but for the sake of the story. I'm sorry, I can't really control the volume of my... She cut me off, saying, "And you've hardly written anything on your paper. I don't think you're incapable of remembering something about your childhood." I replied, "I'm sorry, but I genuinely can't remember much of my childhood for reasons I don't want to discuss." I started to tear up, realizing if I didn't find something to soothe myself, I was going to have a meltdown in the middle of class. I keep a bar of dark chocolate in my bag for situations like this, so I reached for it. But as I was about to take it out, the teacher yelled, "I said no eating in my classroom. Take those headphones off now. Oregon, you will be sent outside with an absent mark." At this point, my friends and I had had enough. Friend 2 almost shouted, Can't you see she's about to have a panic attack because you're scolding her for no good reason? Those headphones aren't even connected to her phone. She's wearing them because she has very sensitive hearing. You yelling at her is only making it worse. As a matter of fact, I think she'll go outside and take the absent mark if it means you'll stop treating her like this. And you know what? I'll go with her because your behavior is seriously unfair. I was trying to find something to fiddle with, rocking back and forth, and at this point, I started having a meltdown. For me, when this happens, I go nonverbal. The teacher said, "Oh, so do you want to go outside and have your little temper tantrum? Answer me. Look at me while I'm talking to you." I. At this point, friend one and two others grabbed my things, gently took my hand, and led me out of the classroom to the student hangout room, which has some sofas. We could hear the teacher slam the door behind us. The rest of the story is what my friends told me afterward. Apparently, after we left, the teacher said, "That is not how I expect you all to act. I thought by this age, you'd know how to behave in class." Friend 4 replied, "She's autistic, for goodness sake." The teacher responded, "I don't care if you're Santa Claus or Alexander Stubb. You can't act like children in my class and be disrespectful." A random classmate chimed in. "She wasn't being disrespectful. She was fine. You're the one who made a big deal over her headphones and just for being here." The teacher then said, "Well, I saw her wrists, so maybe she didn't want to be here at one point." She giggled after making this horrible comment. I wasn't told the rest of what happened because, apparently, the teacher said some pretty terrible things about me, but she was eventually put on leave for her actions. I hope this story was at least a little understandable. Edit. I'm a bit of an alternative girl, and I have a resting expression that some people misinterpret. My tone of voice can sometimes sound sarcastic, but if you knew me better, you'd know I'm one of the kindest people around. Most of my teachers say I'm a positive and funny person in class, but it seems like my looks shouldn't be an excuse for bad treatment. Story 4. You won't believe the absolute roller coaster of a ride I had on the bus today. We all know public transport can be a wild adventure, but today took the cake, the frosting, and probably the whole bakery. So grab a snack and settle in for the tale of the lady of the lost earbud and the bus driver with a temper. Now, let me set the scene. Yours truly, just an ordinary soul who's learned to navigate the ins and outs of the daily bus grind, was minding their own business on the homeward-bound ride. Picture me, casually jamming to my latest playlist, headphones plugged in, and occasionally eavesdropping on bits of conversation from my fellow passengers. The sun was setting, casting a warm golden hue over everything, a pretty decent end to a regular day. That's when it happened. Out of the blue, this piercing shriek split the air. I'm talking about the kind of scream that makes you drop your phone and question your existence. All eyes swiveled toward the source, which was none other than a lady in her early 30s, gesticulating wildly with her phone plastered to her ear. Oh boy, here we go. She's yammering away like there's no tomorrow, and I'm trying to piece together the situation from the fragments I'm catching. Apparently, she had dropped one of her precious earbuds. Yeah, you heard that right. Just one tiny earbud, and it was like the world was about to implode. We've all been there, right? But this lady was taking it to a whole new level. So, as she's continuing her one-woman opera, she suddenly locks eyes with the bus driver through the rearview mirror. And that's when things took an unexpected turn. She starts yelling at the poor guy like he's the root of all her earbud-related miseries. "Stop this bus right now. You hear me? Stop." Now, here's where things get even crazier. We're on this bridge that's practically a no-stop zone. The kind where if you slam on the brakes, you'll send half the passengers flying. But this lady, bless her heart, is on a mission. She's demanding the impossible, and it's clear that the bus driver is torn between keeping his cool and not causing a mass panic. Now, I've got to hand it to this bus driver. He's got nerves of steel, or at least he did until this lady started testing them. With a look that could kill and probably did a little, he manages to bring the bus to a screeching halt without causing a 10-car pileup on the bridge. The collective gasp from the passengers was like something out of a cheesy horror movie. Miraculously, we didn't crash, but it was a near thing. At this point, I'm just trying to enjoy my own personal concert, while the world around me seems to have taken a detour to crazy town. And then, like a whirlwind of fury, the lady storms off the bus, her mission apparently accomplished. But wait, there's more. She dashes across the road like a woman possessed, dodging cars and pedestrians like a real-life Frogger champion. And what do you know? The big reveal: she dropped her earbud. Yes, you read that correctly. She disrupted the entire bus, brought us to the brink of disaster, all for the sake of a single, solitary earbud. I'm talking about the kind that costs less than your daily coffee fix. The bus driver, who by now has probably lost a year off his life, just stares incredulously as she holds up her prize like it's the Holy Grail. The lady, triumphant in her conquest, takes a victory lap back to the bus, her head held high and her earbuds safely stashed away like it's a precious gem. But let me tell you, the bus driver was having none of it. As she steps back on, he goes off like a volcano that's been dormant for centuries. Do you have any idea what you just put everyone through? We could have crashed back there. All this for a dang earbud? You nearly gave me a heart attack, he's yelling, veins popping, face red as a tomato. And the rest of us? Well, we're a mix of shock, relief, and trying not to burst into laughter at the sheer absurdity of it all. The lady, now slightly sheepish, mumbles something about not wanting to lose the pair. The bus driver just throws up his hands like he's surrendering to the madness, and gives her a piece of his mind in a way that only someone who's been driving this route for decades can. It's a masterpiece of exasperation and bewildered disbelief. Finally, he waves her off the bus with a, "Just go, lady, and please, for the love of everything, hold on to those earbuds like they're made of gold." And off she goes, back into the urban wilderness, probably to regale her friends with the epic saga of the misplaced earbud that brought a bus to its knees. Story 5. I moved in July to a 5-person apartment in a small Spanish city, known for its vibrant university life. I'm Spanish too, and a student, just like 2 other girls who arrived in August. We're all in our 20s. There's also a guy who works full-time, but the main issue in the apartment is the 5th roommate, an American woman over 40 years old who moved in late August. We don't know her exact age or what she does for a living, only that she's from California. Since moving in, she's been nothing but a nuisance. When I found out we'd be living with an older woman, I was concerned, and rightly so. I feared she would try to act like the head of the household instead of cohabiting with us as equals. Sure enough, she tries to impose her own rules constantly. When she wants something done, it has to be done immediately, according to her. She doesn't agree with how we divide chores and dislikes how flexible we are with them. She's also been complaining nonstop about the storage situation, even though there's plenty of space, except for the fridge, which was always a bit tricky to manage. What makes it harder is that she only speaks English and makes little effort to communicate in Spanish. While I'm fluent in English, my other roommates aren't, which complicates even basic communication. The most frustrating part is that, for some reason, she is fixated on me. It started with her making rude comments about my weight and escalated to her trying to control the storage space I use. I own a lot of ingredients, so I offered to free up space if anyone else needed it. But my roommates declined because they had already divided and selected their storage areas. Despite this, she insisted that I shouldn't use more than 1 cabinet, which is hypocritical since she herself uses 2 cabinets. She also uses 2 bathrooms and doesn't follow the chore schedule. It's a clear case of rules for you, but not for me. Her aggression towards me became constant, but I tried to stay calm, though my patience was wearing thin. Thankfully, my other roommates are sweet, responsible, and respectful, and we always manage to work things out quickly with simple conversations. Things reached a breaking point when I was cooking in the kitchen, peacefully listening to music with my headphones on. I enjoy cooking, and I always clean up after myself. She barged into the kitchen, accusing me of taking up too much space, even though there's enough room for 3 people to cook at once, and demanded that I stop spending so much time in the kitchen. She even called me a hog. At that moment, I lost my patience. I raised my voice and told her off, calling her obnoxious, disrespectful, demanding, and unreasonable. I made it clear that she had been nothing but a problem since she arrived, and that she was not to speak to me until further notice. My other roommates heard the argument and sided with me, which irritated her even more. She then tried to set new rules, like banning kitchen use after 6 p.m., requiring us to inform her of any visitors, and suggesting a mandatory common lunch every week. The unified no from all of us clearly bothered her, and she retreated to her room. Since that day, she's been avoiding us, and we're doing the same. She barely comes out of her room and doesn't speak to anyone. Occasionally, she posts some absurd things in the group chat, but we either ignore her or shut her down. The agency managing the flat is aware of the situation, and we've agreed that if this period of silence continues, or if she starts acting up again, she will be asked to leave. She seems to have realized that she can't impose her will on us, and for now, she's respecting my request to leave me alone. I don't feel bad about how things turned out because my other roommates and I are united, and we know how to handle the situation. I just hope she takes some time to reflect and either decides to behave or leaves. There are other issues with her as well. She stays up late at night, and we can hear her in the kitchen making noise at 4 or 5 a.m. But she complains if we make noise during the morning or midday, because that's when she sleeps. She also sends passive-aggressive messages at those hours, demanding that chores be done immediately, but we just respond that we'll do them on our own schedule. She once laughed at one of my roommate's accents, mocking the way she speaks. She tries to manipulate the other girls by giving them gifts, which are just old clothes she leaves at their doors. Then, when something doesn't go her way, she says, "I've been so nice to you, I give you gifts." There's so much more, but I think this post is already long enough. Story 6. I had just graduated from college, did not do an internship, shame on me, and had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. I was on Indeed.com, a job posting site, just throwing up my resume to see what stuck. I was not having much luck finding anything. That was until I received a call from a security company. You know, the company that advertises itself as the largest security company in the world. Anyways, they brought me in for an interview, which was actually disguised as a job offer. Experience now would have seen that as a red flag, but I was green and didn't know any better. For those that don't know, security works like this. Client, I need security. Security company, we can provide guards to you at X plus $25, X as the guards pay. Client, great, it's a horrible business model, but again, I was young and ignorant. In order to protect my anonymity, the client will hereafter be referred to as Center. Who Center was is irrelevant to this story. After several HR hiccups, more red flags, I finally made it to Center to start guarding their facility. I cannot emphasize how good of a job this could have been. I was paid well for the work I was providing, not like the security company, but still well, the job itself was cake. My coworkers were awesome, more on that in a bit, and there was such camaraderie among the other guards. Well, all except one person. The site supervisor. We'll call her Karen, because that's what that witch looked like. Unfortunately, because this happened so many years ago, I can't provide as many juicy details for a good suspenseful build-up, but I'll try my best to fill in as many things as I can. I worked with the greatest group of men and women I will probably ever work with. I worked with former Marines, law enforcement, naval ship captains, high-ranking military, pretty much an elite group of boys and girls. I was clearly a boy in their world, but for some reason, they really liked me, motivated me to reach for more. The reality was, they had their careers in service, and just wanted something to get them out of the house. Don't get me wrong, they weren't old and decrepit. Most of them were from the north, and had already retired out, and were receiving a good pension. They kept reiterating it to anyone who would talk to them. The thing was, Karen was just like me in that she had a bad resume, had no experience, much less be qualified to supervise this elite group. Once she realized that, that's when the paranoia began to set in. She had a list. Everyone that was on it. Their workplace became a living hell. Not only that this witch chased you off, but if she caught wind of where you were going, she'd actively call your next employer to drag your name through the mud. It was sick. Not only was she toxic as a boss, but she was woefully incompetent. Let me give you a summary of some of the things Karen did. Karen constantly threatened termination, openly admitting to targeting employees and minority employees especially, continuously revised the schedule throughout the week, causing multiple guards to arrive or sometimes post uncovered, wielded the schedule as a weapon to punish guards she didn't like, degraded our staff as well as center's staff on a routine basis, intimidated guards requesting leave, falsified timesheets, illegally initiated traffic stops on center's employees, disgusting amount of sexual harassment, warned us guards not to speak with center's employees, and went through several mood swings a shift. Yeah, she was a real piece of work. Being located in a southern state, there was no union for us. The best we could do was keep firing emails up the chain of command. When I say we, I mean them. At the time, I didn't have the confidence I do now, and I lurked in the shadows. My thought process was, if these people, who are way smarter than me, aren't able to affect change, what chance did I have? Karen's actions I listed above were quite routine, and were displayed on a daily basis. Slowly, but surely, the great men and women I came to know and love would come to my shack and say, "Hey, I just can't do it anymore." It was so sad. I respected these people so much, but they were just cannon fodder in Karen's insane war. When the new employees showed up to replace the ones that left, they would all say deuces as soon as they arrived. One night, I was talking with one of Center's employees, because screw anything Karen had to say, and they were laughing because a report had just come out about how my company had a turnover rate of 97.5%. Even though it could have been easy to figure out, I had never thought about it, and that left me shaken. By that point, all the original staff was gone, and I was now a supervisor, not dissimilar to the Hitler Youth situation. That's honestly how it felt like. I knew I was a passenger on the Titanic. How we didn't lose that contract just blows my mind. Not only did my company hate her, but everyone who worked for Center did as well, because she made their lives a living hell by being Karen wannabe cop. I figured if we didn't lose the contract, I would end up on the blacklist eventually and get chased out. However, for all the misery she caused people I respected and Center, I wasn't about to go into the night quietly. And that's where the revenge begins. Remember that college degree I mentioned earlier? Yeah, it's in communications. It's a stupid degree that I don't recommend anyone getting, unless you like barely above minimum wage. But what that degree entailed was lots of research, papers, interviewing, etc. I really didn't know how good I was at it, until after this plan concluded and used it several times later. Different stories for a different day. Now, I understand a lot of people might be judging the way I write this post. There's a huge difference, though. Right now, I'm chilling while I casually type this. The difference is I wrote a formal piece for a professional setting, not dissimilar to lawyer jargon. I knew what would happen if I went up the chain of command. There's no amount of technical allegations I could throw at the security company, because they are siding with the very likely option that I'm just saying nonsense that won't go beyond HR. I had already secured a new job, in a different field, notice already in, so I had nothing to lose at this point. I interviewed all current staff and the former staff I trusted, and gathered every single grievance they had against Karen. I still have that list on my desktop, and you read some of the highlights above. They had no idea what I was doing, except, he has an idea. I don't recommend anyone doing what I did, but like I said, I was out the door, and moving on to a different field, so I didn't care anymore. I'm honestly not entirely sure of the ranking structure that Center had. There were so many chiefs and different departments within. I had to trust somebody though. One boss, who I'll refer to as Bossman from now on, hated Karen with a passion, because her nonsense made his life hell. I had to test his loyalty though. One morning, while Bossman and I were alone, I began a little light interrogation, while feeding him intel about the guard situation being under Karen's thumb. He agreed that the turnover was unacceptable, but he wasn't high enough up the chain to affect any change, unless he had some sort of proof. I didn't go into details, but I informed him I had a list, and I'd be happy to give it to him. He said absolutely. The problem was that Karen was hella paranoid, would know if I showed up when I wasn't scheduled, and rightfully suspect mutiny was afoot. I told him I'd meet him at 6 a.m. the next day. I went home that night and put the finishing touches on the list. There was one final thing I had to do. This was a guarded facility, and I'd have to get past the guard without raising suspicion, or alert Karen I was there. When I got to the gate, I don't know what was coming over me. I lifted up the envelope my letter was in, and said, "Mark, obvious fake name, I was never here." He just looked at me, nodded, and let me through. Why, I'll never know. Didn't ask. He had no idea about the list. He hated Karen too, but he did a lot of talking, so I never shared it with him. I met Bossman, handed him the envelope, we shook hands, and that was that. I was already on the schedule to start my next job that overnight, so I went home to sleep. I never expected anything to come of this, because nothing had happened after so many good faith attempts with proof. I just did it, so I could walk away with a clean conscience. I went to work that night, turned off my phone, and when I came back to the car to have a smoke, I turned on my phone. My phone began flooding with text messages. I really don't have the full story of what happened. This is what I collected from my ex-coworkers. Apparently, Bossman with several of the other chiefs had forced my security company to have an on-site meeting, told them what a piece of trash Karen was, how much of a liability she was, and to remove her from the site permanently. I also heard she was wailing while she was being escorted to her car. Ah, yes, salty tears. Good riddance.